Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I have a story that's going to leave you speechless. Imagine dedicating your entire life trying to prove yourself to the very people who should have believed in you the most, only to find out behind closed doors, they thought you were nothing but a failure. But what if you had the power to turn the tables? What if, after years of being underestimated, you were holding the very thing they couldn't live without and they had no idea? This is the story of Revenge Jessica, a woman who spent her whole life being torn down by her own family, until one unexpected phone call changed everything. So, grab a coffee, sit back, because what you're about to hear is not just a story, it's a masterclass in how to rise when everyone wants to see you fall. You know, sometimes the people who should love you the most are the ones who cut you the deepest. That's exactly what happened to me the night I accidentally heard the truth. A truth so cruel it shattered every illusion I had clung to for years. It started like any ordinary evening. I was at home, sitting at my desk, the blue glow of my laptop screen reflecting off the glass of cold coffee beside me. The spreadsheets I had been working on blurred before my tired eyes. I was juggling 3 projects that week, handling million-dollar accounts and trying to prove to myself, to the world, that I had made it, that I was successful, that I was enough. And then my phone buzzed. I glanced down and saw the name on the screen, Dad. My stomach tightened instantly. That name used to mean safety, comfort, the promise of home. But over the years it had turned into something else. A weight I carried, a reminder of everything I had never been. I sighed and answered, "Hey, Dad." But there was no reply. First I thought maybe the signal was bad. I could hear faint noises, a chair scraping against the floor, a sigh, the soft rustle of papers. And then I heard his voice. But he wasn't talking to me. "She's a failure," he said, the words sharp and casual, as if he was commenting on the weather. "She'll never succeed." I froze, every muscle in my body tensing. I stayed silent, the phone still pressed to my ear. My breath caught in my throat as I listened. My mother's voice chimed in, lower but just as cutting. "Oh, Greg, don't be so harsh. She pays the mortgage, doesn't she?" He scoffed. "That's the least she can do. After everything we've done for her. You think I'm proud of her? She was a mistake. One that should never have happened. She'll never be anything more than a joke." Mistake. Joke. I sat there, paralyzed, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. It wasn't just what he said. It was how easily the words rolled off his tongue, like he had always believed them. And then the call ended. He hadn't meant to call me. He'd simply forgotten to hang up. I sat there in the silence of my apartment, the words still ringing in my ears like a cruel echo. You'd think I would be used to it. My father had always been critical. As a child, I had worked harder than anyone, desperate to hear him say he was proud of me. Straight A's in school. Not good enough. Promotions at work. Expected. Buying my first home. Foolish waste of money. But even with all of that, nothing compared to hearing those words out loud, spoken when he thought I wasn't listening. And here's the part they never knew, the part that made all of it so painfully ironic. For the past 6 years, I had been the reason they still had a roof over their heads. They thought they were making payments to the bank. But the truth, after they nearly lost their house, after my mother called me crying late one night because they were drowning in debt, I stepped in, quietly, without ever telling them. Through JSC Holdings, the investment company I built from nothing, I bought out their mortgage. Every payment they sent didn't go to the bank, came to me. And every month, I covered the rest of the costs to make sure they could keep their home. I never asked for thanks. Never wanted them to grovel. All I had ever wanted was something simple, something every child wants, to make them proud. But that night, hearing my father's voice slice through me like glass, I realized the truth. No matter what I did, it would never be enough for them. I had spent my whole life trying to earn the love of people who saw me as nothing more than a burden. And that realization, it broke something inside me. But it also set something free. Because if they thought I was weak, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. Growing up, I learned very early that love in my family came with conditions. Conditions I could never quite meet. No matter what I did, I always seemed to fall short in my father's eyes. I was the disappointment, the mistake he never wanted. I can't even remember a time when he told me he was proud of me. Not when I graduated at the top of my class. Not when I got my first promotion. Not when I bought my own apartment at 26 without a single dime of their money. Every achievement I worked for, every milestone I hit, was either dismissed, downplayed, or met with a shake of the head and some variation of, "Is that all?" As a kid, I used to think if I just tried harder, maybe one day he'd look at me differently. Maybe one day I'd finally be enough. That day never came. Even after I left home, built my own career, climbed my way up in a world that never handed me a thing, I still felt like I was chasing something I'd never catch. Their approval, their love. And the worst part, I wasn't just fighting for love. I was fighting against their constant disappointment, their judgment, their silence. 6 years ago, that judgment nearly destroyed them. It was the middle of the night when my phone rang. I remember because I almost didn't pick up. I was exhausted, buried in work, trying to secure a deal that would change everything for me. But when I saw my mother's name flashing on the screen, I answered. She was crying, barely able to speak between the sobs. They were going to lose the house. Months behind on payments. My father had taken a second mortgage to cover Liam's failed business and gambled away the rest. They were drowning in debt, and the bank was ready to foreclose. My mother begged me to help. Begged me not to tell my father she had called. He was too proud, she said. Too angry. He would never accept help, especially not from me. The child he couldn't even pretend to respect. I didn't hesitate. The next morning I called my financial advisor, Mark. We drafted the paperwork. Through my company JSC Holdings, I quietly bought the mortgage from the bank. My parents didn't even realize it was me behind the deal. They thought they were still paying the bank, unaware that every check they mailed was being deposited directly into my account. I didn't stop there. Their payments barely covered a fraction of what was owed each month, so I covered the rest, quietly, for 6 years without asking for anything in return. I did it because I couldn't stand the thought of them losing their home, the home I grew up in. I did it because, deep down, I thought maybe if I saved them, maybe if I worked hard enough, I'd finally hear the words I had craved my whole life. "I'm proud of you." But that call I overheard, the one that shattered my heart just days ago, made one thing painfully clear. It was never going to happen. No matter how hard I tried, I would always be the failure in their eyes. And as I sat there that night, staring at the folders on my laptop, the mortgage documents, the payment schedules, the ownership papers, I realized something I had been too blind to see for years. I had been holding them up all along. They had been living under my roof, protected by my money, while mocking me behind my back. They called me a failure, all while depending on me for everything. And that night, something inside me finally snapped. Because I wasn't going to spend another second chasing their approval. I wasn't going to let them drain me dry, emotionally or financially. I had the power now. And they had no idea. That night, after hearing my father's voice slice through me like a knife, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. His words looping in my mind over and over. She's a failure, a mistake, she'll never succeed. I had spent years trying to silence that voice in my head, but now I knew it wasn't just in my head. It was real. It was how he had always seen me. By sunrise, something inside me had shifted. The hurt hadn't gone away, but it had hardened into something sharper, something colder. I was done feeling broken. Done feeling like I owed them anything. I got out of bed, made a strong cup of black coffee, and sat back down at my laptop. The files were already there, waiting for me. The ones I had kept meticulously organized for 6 years. I clicked open the folder labeled JSC Holdings. Property number 12. Their house. The house they believed the bank still owned. I started scrolling through the documents. The mortgage buyout agreement, the payment history, the ownership details. Every line, every clause was one I had read 100 times before. But that morning I read them differently. Not as a daughter trying to keep her parents safe, but as the woman they had underestimated. That's when I saw it. The purchase option clause. When I first bought the mortgage, my financial advisor, Mark, had suggested adding it in, a legal safeguard he had called it. At the time, I hadn't paid much attention. I thought, what could possibly go wrong? I wasn't planning to ever use it. But now the words glared back at me like a lifeline. If the borrowers missed a payment, JSC Holdings had the legal right to assume full ownership of the property immediately. No lengthy foreclosure process. No negotiations. No mercy. One missed payment and the house would be mine. Without question, without dispute. And I realized right then the cruel irony of it all. The failure, the mistake, the daughter they had mocked and dismissed, was the only reason they still had a roof over their heads. For 6 years they had been living comfortably, pretending they were in control, pretending they didn't need me, while quietly depending on me for everything. I had been their safety net. But not anymore. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the cold glow of the screen. My hands were steady, calmer than they had any right to be. For the first time I saw the truth clearly. They had spent my entire life trying to tear me down. But the entire time, without even knowing it, they had been living under my protection. I had the power to take everything away from them. And the terrifying part was, I didn't even have to lift a finger. All I had to do was wait. Because sooner or later, they would miss a payment. And when they did, they would learn the truth. That night, for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not out of joy, but out of something far more dangerous. Because I knew exactly how this was going to end. And this time, I wasn't going to be the one left broken. Even after everything I had heard, part of me still wanted to believe maybe I was overreacting. Maybe my parents were just angry in the heat of the moment. Maybe they didn't mean it. But deep down I knew better. That night, after reviewing the mortgage documents, I stared at my phone for a long time. There was only one person I trusted enough to talk to about this. My Uncle Ray. Uncle Ray had always been different. He was my father's older brother, but he never treated me like an obligation. Growing up, he was the only one who showed up to my school plays, the only one who congratulated me when I got my first promotion, the only one who told me I mattered. So I sent him a message. Hey, Uncle Ray. I need to ask you something. Have you ever heard Dad or Mom say anything about me? Anything unusual? It didn't take long for the reply to come. Jessica, we need to talk. It's worse than you think. My stomach twisted. Worse. I wasn't sure how it could get worse than hearing my own father call me a mistake. The phone rang a minute later. I picked up on the first ring. Uncle Ray. He sighed heavily, his voice low and serious. Jessica, I've kept quiet for too long. But after what I heard last week, I can't anymore. I braced myself. What is it? There was a long pause before he spoke again. They don't just talk about you behind your back, Jess. They're planning something. Your father. He's convinced you've been hiding money from them. He told your mother last week that if you don't give them more cash, they'll find a way to force you. My throat tightened. Force me how? Uncle Ray's voice hardened. He's been looking into your finances, digging around. He's talking about contacting your employer, trying to discredit you. Maybe even reporting you to the IRS, claiming you've committed fraud. He wants to ruin you, Jess. If you won't give him what he wants to make sure you lose everything. For a second I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just the words. It was the fact that it didn't surprise me. That somewhere deep inside I already knew they were capable of this. All those years of biting comments, the cold dismissals, the backhanded praise. It wasn't just indifference. It was cruelty. And now it had a purpose. They didn't just see me as a failure. They saw me as an obstacle. As a bank account they could manipulate, threaten, and bleed dry. My hands curled into fists. The sadness I'd been feeling shifted into something else. Something colder, sharper. Anger. Not the kind that burns bright and fades away. The kind that freezes over and stays. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. I need you to do something for me, Uncle Ray. Anything. I need proof. I need to know exactly what they're planning. If they're going to try to destroy me, I want to be ready. Another pause. "I'll see what I can find," he promised. "But Jessica, sorry, you deserve better than this." When I hung up, I sat there in the dark, staring at nothing. For years, I had bent over backward to earn their love. For years, I had believed that if I worked hard enough, they would finally see me. But they had never seen me. They had only seen what they could take from me. And now, they were about to find out what happened when the person they underestimated stopped playing by their rules. The next morning, I woke up with a clear purpose. No more doubt. No more second-guessing. I had spent too many years bending over backward, trying to prove myself to people who never wanted me to succeed. That ended now. I picked up my phone and called Mark, my financial advisor, the only person who knew the truth about the mortgage deal I had set up years ago. "Jessica," he greeted, his voice warm and professional. "This isn't a social call, is it?" "Not exactly," I said, cutting straight to the point. "I need to double-check the terms on property number 12. If they miss a payment, how fast can I act?" Mark didn't even hesitate. Immediately. The purchase option clause allows JSC Holdings to seize full ownership the moment they default. Airtight. They'd have no legal recourse unless they can pay off the full balance, which last time I checked, they definitely can't. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "Good," I said. "I need you to do one more thing for me. Monitor their account. I want to know exactly how close they are to default." Mark chuckled lightly. "Already on it. Their balance is dangerously low. If they don't magically find $5,800 by the 15th, they're done." I glanced at the calendar. That was 4 days away. 4 days until everything they'd built their pride on would crumble. 4 days until the people who called me a mistake would realize they'd been living on my generosity this entire time. "Keep me posted," I said, then hung up. For the first time in a long time, I felt something like peace, but it wasn't the comforting kind. It was cold, focused, unforgiving. Later that afternoon, as if the universe wanted to test just how done I was, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "Hey sweetheart, we were wondering if you'd like to come over for dinner this Sunday. It's been too long. We miss you." I stared at the message for a long time, a bitter smile creeping across my face. I knew exactly why they were suddenly so eager to see me. It wasn't because they missed me. It wasn't because they cared. It was because they needed money. It always was. Could have ignored it. Blocked the number. Walked away and waited for the default notice to arrive like a storm they never saw coming. But something in me, something sharp and cold, told me to play along. If they wanted to pretend we were family, I could pretend too. I typed back, "Of course." Looking forward to it. A lie, but a necessary one. Because now, I wasn't walking into that house as the desperate daughter begging for approval. I was walking in as the woman holding all the cards. They had no idea what was coming, and I intended to enjoy every second of it. Before we dive into what happens next, I want to hear from you. What would you do if you were in Jessica's shoes? Imagine discovering that the very people you've been helping in secret are the ones plotting against you. Would you walk away? Or would you teach them a lesson? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really curious to see how you would handle a situation like this. Now let's get back to the story, because trust me, things are about to get even more intense. Sunday came faster than I expected. I stood outside my parents' house, staring at the front door. The door of the home I technically owned. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years I had fought for a place at this table. Fought for their approval, their love. But tonight I wasn't here looking for any of that. I was here to watch the show. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders and knocked. The door swung open almost immediately. My mother's face lit up like she hadn't spent her entire life tearing me down. "Jessica, sweetheart," she chirped, pulling me into a hug that felt stiff, rehearsed. "It's so good to see you." I smiled politely, pretending not to notice how forced her enthusiasm was. "Good to see you too, Mom." Inside, the house smelled like garlic and roasted chicken, the scent of carefully planned hospitality. The table was already set, everything in its place, as if they believed a home-cooked meal would soften the conversation that was inevitably coming. My father sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, wearing that same unreadable expression I'd seen my entire life, the one that made me feel like I was always being judged. "Jessica," he greeted with a nod, his voice almost warm. "Glad you could make it." I nodded back. "Wouldn't miss it." We sat through small talk over dinner, my parents asking shallow questions about work, about life, pretending like they cared. My brother Liam lounged back in his chair, smirking at me like he knew something I didn't. But I knew everything. I could feel the tension bubbling beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to burst. And then finally it did. As my mother set down her fork and reached across the table, her voice took on that syrupy sweet tone I'd come to recognize as dangerous. "Jess, your father and we've been thinking a lot about family lately," she began, squeezing my hand dramatically. "How important it is to support one another, especially in difficult times." I kept my face neutral, even as my stomach twisted. My father cleared his throat, his voice carefully measured. "The truth is, Jessica, things have been tight financially." There it was. My mother glanced at him, then back at me, her smile strained. "We were wondering if you could help us out. Just a little extra each month. Nothing much, maybe $3,000. It would make all the difference." $3,000. I almost laughed. They had no idea I was already covering the bulk of their mortgage every single month. No idea that the house they were sitting in, the one they thought they owned, had technically belonged to me for 6 years. Instead, they sat there, buttering me up, asking for more, without a clue that they were days away from losing everything. I set my fork down gently and tilted my head. $3,000. My mother gave me a hopeful smile. "Only until things stabilize." My father leaned forward. "It's nothing compared to what we've done for you," he added, his voice sharper now. "We raised you. We gave you everything. The least you can do is support your family." I stared at him for a long moment, letting the weight of his words settle. Support my family. As if I hadn't already been doing that in secret for years. I forced a polite smile and nodded. "I'll think about it." Relief washed over their faces, as if they had won some kind of battle. But they had no idea the war was already over. Because in just a few days, the truth would hit them like a tidal wave. And when it did, I wouldn't be there to save them. 3 days after that awkward fake family dinner, the call came. I was sitting at my desk, working late as usual when my phone lit up. It was Mark. "Jessica," he said without even greeting me. "They defaulted." For a second I didn't say anything. I just stared out the window, letting those 2 words settle over me like a cold wave. They defaulted. "It's official," Mark continued. "As of midnight, JSC Holdings is the sole legal owner of the property. They missed the payment, and the purchase option clause has been triggered. The house is yours." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. It was done. The house my parents had spent years lording over me, the house they thought was theirs. It belonged to me now. And they had no idea. "Do you want me to start eviction proceedings?" Mark asked. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "Not yet. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about truth. About letting them feel, for once in their lives, the weight of everything they'd built crashing down." I didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, at exactly 9:07 a.m., the official foreclosure notice went out. A cold, formal letter from the legal department of JSC Holdings. No emotion. No explanation. Just facts. By 9:42 a.m. my phone rang. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later she called again. Then my father. Then Liam. The messages started piling in, one after another, frantic, confused, panicked. "Jessica, please call us back. There's something wrong with the bank, they sent us a foreclosure notice. You need to help us. This has to be a mistake." I didn't respond. Not right away. I let them sit in it, let them taste the uncertainty, the fear. At exactly 10:43 a.m. I finally picked up. "Jessica." My mother's voice was frantic, breathless. "Sweetheart, thank God. Something's wrong. We just got a notice saying we defaulted on the mortgage. But that can't be right. We've been making payments." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I could hear my father in the background, barking questions, his voice sharp and angry. "It's not a mistake," I said calmly. There was silence on the other end. "What do you mean?" my mother whispered. I let the pause stretch for a moment longer, then delivered the truth like a blade. "You didn't pay your mortgage. And when you defaulted, the house became mine." Another beat of silence, heavy and suffocating. My father's voice cut in, low and furious. "What the hell are you talking about? The mortgage is with the bank." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "No, Dad. It hasn't been with the bank for 6 years. You've been paying me." The silence that followed was deafening. "You're lying," my father finally snapped, but his voice cracked at the edges. "I'm not," I said simply. "6 years ago, when you were about to lose the house, I bought the mortgage. Every payment you've made since then, it's been going to JSC Holdings, my company. I've been the one keeping this roof over your heads." I could hear my mother's sharp inhale, the quiet horror in her breath, and then Liam's voice in the background, scoffing. "You mean to tell me we've been paying rent to our failure of a sister this whole time? Figures." I ignored him. "You wanted to know who's really been holding this family together." Continued. "It's me. And now, I don't have to anymore." I hung up before they could respond, because now the truth was out. And for once, they were the ones left powerless. The fallout came fast and furious. Within minutes of me hanging up, my phone exploded with messages. My mother, my father, Liam, all of them calling, texting, leaving voicemails that swung wildly between rage, guilt, and desperation. "Jessica, how could you do this to us? We're your family. You're being cruel, heartless, after everything we've done for you. You're nothing but an ungrateful little brat. You'll regret this." Liam, of course, couldn't resist taking his usual shot. "You think you're so clever. You're still a failure, Jessica. Just a bitter, lonely woman who thinks she's won." I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I drafted one simple email, clear and cold. "Effective immediately. Your status at the property is month-to-month tenancy under JSC Holdings. Rent payment is due within 30 days. Failure to pay will result in eviction proceedings." That was it. No apologies. No explanations. No room for negotiation. They had spent my entire life trying to control me. Now the roles had reversed, and they couldn't stand it. 3 days later, I received an email from a law office. My parents had hired an attorney, claiming the foreclosure was a mistake, that I had manipulated them, that they had been deceived. I forwarded the email to Mark. 10 minutes later he called, practically laughing. "They don't have a case," he said. "They signed every document. They agreed to every clause. Legally, you're untouchable." I wanted to feel relief, but instead, all I felt was exhaustion. 'Cause I knew my parents. They weren't going to accept defeat. They weren't going to walk away quietly. And I was right. That night, as I was cleaning up after dinner, my phone buzzed with a message from Uncle Ray. "Jessica, call me. It's urgent." Called him immediately. "Uncle Ray. What's going on?" He sighed heavily, his voice low and serious. "I just got off the phone with your father. He's not just fighting this legally anymore." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "He's calling your employer, trying to dig up dirt on you. Said if he can't get the house back, he's going to ruin you another way." I went cold. "He's telling people you've committed fraud," Uncle Ray continued. "That you've been hiding money. He wants you fired, discredited, anything to force you to back down." I closed my eyes, inhaling slowly. Course, when backed into a corner, my father wouldn't admit he'd lost. He wouldn't reflect on how he got here. He'd burn everything to the ground before accepting he wasn't in control. "Thank you for telling me," I said quietly. "Jessica, Sorry. You don't deserve this. No, I replied, my voice steady. But I should have seen it coming. I hung up and sat there for a long time, staring at the phone in my hand. All my life, I had bent over backward to prove myself to them. And now, when they couldn't use me anymore, they wanted to destroy me. But not this time. This time I wasn't going to let them. I wasn't about to let my father take away everything I'd built. The next morning I walked straight into my company's HR office. My heart was pounding, but my face was calm, controlled. I had spent years working my way up in this company, fighting to be taken seriously. I wasn't going to let a bitter old man tear it all down. Lauren, my manager, looked up when I knocked on her door. Jessica, everything okay? I stepped inside and shut the door behind me. I need to talk to you. It's important. She motioned for me to sit, concern flickering across her face. What's going on? I took a deep breath and laid it all out, the mortgage, the foreclosure, the manipulation, the threats. I told her everything, even the part about my father planning to call the company and accuse me of fraud. When I finished, she shook her head slowly. Jessica, first of all, I'm sorry you're going through this. Secondly, you have nothing to worry about. We deal with people like this more often than you think. We know how to spot when someone's lying to hurt someone else. Relief flooded my chest. I'll notify the legal department right away, she continued. If your father tries anything, we'll shut it down. He has no power here. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. But the battle wasn't over. 3 days later it happened. A hard knock at my door. Sharp, urgent, almost angry. I didn't have to check the peephole to know who it was. When I opened the door, there they stood. My parents. My father's face was red with fury, jaw tight. My mother's eyes were swollen from crying. Her shoulders hunched like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Jessica, she breathed, her voice breaking. Please. My father's eyes burned into mine. We need to talk. I folded my arms across my chest, leaning casually against the doorframe. Talk then. They glanced at each other, then back at me. You can't do this to us, my father said, his voice low but sharp. This house is our home. You have no right. I raised an eyebrow. I have every right. Legally, financially, and morally. My mother stepped forward, wringing her hands together. We raised you, Jessica. We gave you everything. And now you're punishing us for what? For being hard on you. For calling me a mistake. I shot back, my voice cold but controlled. For telling me I'd never succeed. For trying to ruin my life when I stopped handing you money. She flinched at my words, but my father just glared. His pride too big to crumble. You're being cruel, he spat. You think you're winning, but you're not. You'll regret this. I tilted my head, my voice soft but sharp enough to cut glass. You called me a failure. Joke. A mistake. I took a step closer, meeting his glare head-on. Well, this mistake owns your home. For a moment, the world seemed to freeze. My mother's eyes filled with fresh tears. My father's face twisted in fury. Without another word, I stepped back and slammed the door in their faces. I stood there for a long time, my hand still on the doorknob, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't just a door I had closed that night. It was every chain they'd wrapped around me my entire life. And I wasn't going to open it again. The morning after I slammed the door in their faces, I sent the final nail in the coffin, an official notice to vacate. It was clinical, emotionless, exactly the way they had treated me all these years. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Carter, as previously notified, the mortgage agreement for the property located at 2nd Street is no longer in effect due to non-payment. Your tenancy is officially terminated under JSC Holdings. You are required to vacate the premises within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in formal eviction proceedings. No explanations, no second chances, no room left for manipulation. And as expected, the messages started pouring in almost immediately. My mother's desperate texts flooded my phone first, pleading, bargaining, begging. Jessica, please, don't do this. We're family. You'll regret this. One day you'll need us and we won't be there. My fathers were nastier, colder. You ungrateful brat. Everything you have is because of us. You'll never be anything without this family. Liam, of course, couldn't resist throwing in his poison. Congratulations, Jess. You just destroyed your own family. Hope you're happy. I didn't reply to any of them. I muted their numbers, archived the messages, and went on with my life. Because something inside me had finally snapped, but not in the way they expected. I wasn't broken. I wasn't bitter. I was free. 30 days passed without a word from me. On the last day of their notice, Mark sent me an email. Jessica, they've moved out. Left a mess, but they're gone. I drove by the house once, just to see it. The front yard was overgrown. The windows empty. A pile of trash bags sat by the curb like a silent symbol of everything they had left behind. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't need to. Because I wasn't looking back. 2 weeks later I sold the house. The market was good and the sale closed quickly. As I signed the final papers, I felt something lift off my shoulders. Something I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying my entire life. I used the profits to start something new. Something meaningful. Fun for young women like me. Women trapped in financially abusive families. Women taught to believe they owed the world everything just for being born. Women who needed a way out. Because if there was one thing I had learned from all of this, it was that sometimes the people who should love you the most are the ones who do the most damage. And in the end, family isn't who shares your blood. It's who stands by you. Months passed. The calls and messages finally stopped. The silence felt good, like fresh air after years of suffocating noise. I rebuilt my life. On my terms. One evening, as I was closing my laptop after work, an email notification flashed across my screen. It was from my mother. Jessica, please. I don't know where else to go. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long moment. And then, without hesitation, I deleted it. Because sometimes the best thing you can do is burn the bridge behind you and never look back. And that's how Jessica took back her power. Not with anger, but with the truth, with control, and with the courage to finally choose herself. This story reminds us of an important lesson. Sometimes the people who should love us the most can hurt us the deepest. But in the end, we don't need anyone's approval to be enough. We define our own worth. Thank you so much for staying until the end and listening to this powerful story. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What did you feel while listening to Jessica's journey? Drop your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. I read every single one and I can't wait to hear your perspective. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next emotional, inspiring story coming your way. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and remember your story matters.